Nice launch trajectory countdown net. Pad is clear.
10, 9, 8.
Launch auto sequence
7,
has started.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic. Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed. Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
And great news, all systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with Inmarsat's I-6 F2 payload.
And 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines full power and liftoff of Falcon 9 and Inmarsat. Go Falcon, go Inmarsat.
Just about a minute into flight, and Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from pad 40
Falcon 9 is supersonic
at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying Inmarsat's I-6 F2 payload. We are coming up on max Q here.
Max Q.
And great news, we have just passed through max Q. That is the largest structural load that the vehicle sees on ascent. Now the rocket is typically needs to go 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back down to Earth and get into orbit. So you can keep an eye on the stage 1 telemetry. That's on the bottom left hand of your screen there. You can see those 9 M1D engines burning bright.
Chill has started.
Burning bright there on your screen. And we do have 3 events coming up in rapid succession. That will be MECO, stage separation, and SES-1. MECO is main engine cutoff. That's where we shut down all 9 of the M1D engines that you see burning bright on your screen. That will help slow the stage down and prepare for stage separation. That's where the first stage will separate from second stage. First stage will come back home down to Earth, while second stage continues with SES-1. That's second stage engine start 1. And that MVAC engine will ignite on the second stage. We're coming up on those 3 events here in a few seconds. MECO, stage separation, and SES-1.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation.
MVAC ignition.
And very cool views of MECO stage separation. On your right-hand screen, you can see that MVAC engine is glowing bright. That has now ignited. And coming up next will be fairing separation. The fairing helps protect the payload on ascent, but once we're in the vacuum of space, we no longer need that protection. So we will jettison the fairing halves, and that's coming up here in a few seconds.
Fairing separation.
And great call out. The fairing halves have deployed, and we will be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves again tonight once they make their way back down to Earth.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
It's about T+4 minutes into tonight's mission. If you are just joining us now, Falcon 9 has lifted off successfully, carrying Inmarsat's I-6 F2 payload. Now, we're about to begin the first of the 2 planned MVAC burns for satellite deploy. Around T+6 minutes, you should see on your screen the first stage's entry burn. To start the entry burn, we will relight 3 of the M1D engines, starting with the center engine known as E9, followed shortly by the E1 and the E5 engines, which will slow down the vehicle as it passes back into Earth's atmosphere. As Falcon 9 is coming back down really fast, we need to slow down to reduce the re-entry forces, which will then help us recover and reuse that first stage. During the entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but we're still moving really fast.
Vehicle's on a nominal trajectory.
This causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, or commonly known as a rocket's plume. This deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle's surface. Now that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses, and with each flight builds up a little more on the outside of the vehicle, making it a little sooty. Oftentimes, prior to a launch, you can see that soot on your first stage. Now, coming up in a few seconds, we should be seeing the entry burn begin for the first stage as the booster comes back on its way to Earth. As you can see on the left side of your screen, that is the first stage.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
As you can see and hear it, Stage 1 entry burn has begun.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
As you can see and hear on net, Stage 1 entry burn has shut down. Reusability is key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, which enables more investment in critical scientific research. Falcon 9 on your screen today is supporting and doing the re-entry burn for the 3rd time. Previously supported the GPS-3, Space Vehicle 6, and the Crew 5 missions.
Vehicle's on a nominal trajectory.
The Merlins on the first stage are optimized for sea level. These achieve around 190,000 pounds of thrust during ascent and descent. Fun fact, at liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage has thrust greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power, and it's consuming approximately about 700 gallons of fuel per second. That MVAC engine on your screen is optimized about 220,000 pounds of thrust in vacuum. That is the vacuum of
Stage
space.
1 transonic.
Coming up next, we should be seeing shutdown on our MVAC engine on the 2nd stage, followed quickly by our landing burn on the first stage as it's coming back down.
Stage 2 LTS has safed. Terminal guidance.
MVAC shutdown.
There you can see it and here on the nets. We have confirmation of SECO
Stage
1.
1 landing burn.
And the landing burn for Stage 1 has begun. We are now just waiting for confirmation of good orbital insertion for our 2nd stage.
Nominal orbit insertion.
There you've heard on the nets, nominal orbital insertion. We are now waiting for Falcon to land
Stage 1
back.
landing leg deploy.
Back on our drone ship, just read the instructions. As you can see and hear it, you have SpaceX's 173rd recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. Now, the mission isn't just over yet. The 2nd stage is now embarking on its first coast phase. After the coast phase, we will light that MVAC engine for a 2nd time around T+26 minutes. So till then, sit back and we'll see you back here.
Expected loss of signal Bermuda.
Welcome back to the webcast of our Falcon 9 mission carrying Inmarsat's I-6 F2 payload. If you're just joining us now, we've had a nominal mission so far. Falcon 9 launched at 10:59 Eastern from Space Launch Complex 40 in Cape Canaveral, Florida. We have successfully recovered the first stage back on our drone ship tonight, which marks the overall third landing for this particular booster and the 173rd overall landing of an orbital class rocket. While all that was happening, the second stage has completed its first burn, taking Inmarsat's I-6 F2 payload into its initial parking orbit. Now, we're about a few seconds away from the second ignition of the MVAC, which will carry the second stage and Inmarsat's payload into the orbit needed to deploy the satellite. And there you have seen it, we have second engine start. The MVAC engine has begun burning. Now, this burn is planned to last just under a minute. As you can see, that engine is glowing bright. And the speed and the velocity of stage 2 is picking up. Coming up next, we should be hearing a call out for second engine cutoff, or SECO 2. And there you've heard it, we have SECO 2.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And we've heard the confirmation for nominal orbit insertion. Inmarsat's I-6 F2 payload is still attached to Falcon 9's second stage, with payload deploy scheduled to occur in about 5 minutes. While we wait, sit back and enjoy the views of outer space and the second stage.
Hello there, and welcome back to our webcast. We are nearing the end of our mission tonight for our customer Inmarsat. Now, just a few minutes ago, we had a successful second burn of our second stage, and up next is our final milestone for this mission, payload deploy, which should be coming up here shortly. And as you can see on your screen, there's the payload with some great views of Earth in the background.
Payload separation confirmed.
Inmarsat I-6 F2 is drifting away from Falcon 9's second stage out in space. And that confirms successful deployment of the Inmarsat I-6 F2 payload. And that will end our webcast for tonight.
All of us here at SpaceX want to thank our customer Inmarsat for entrusting us with tonight's mission. We also want to give a shout out to the Range and Federal Aviation Administration for supporting tonight's efforts. Tonight's launch concludes our second launch of the day and our 211th overall SpaceX mission to date. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.